So I want to make a video. I've had a number of people ask me, and I've helped a number of people locally recover seats. And it's not rocket science. It just takes a little time, and it gives you a lot of bang for your buck when you're talking about some of the age of these seats. What I'm doing is I'm recovering this seat. I'm going to be changing the color to black. These are 964 Recaro seats. As some configuration of the same Recaro seats appeared in Porsches from the mid 70s until the mid 90s. A great seat. This one happens to be in excellent condition. I got the whole set, and I will probably be rehoming these covers off these things because they're nice. But I wanted to go through the process and just kind of give some inputs and some of the things I've done. I've done seats in my 928, two of my 928s, a 911, early 911, and a 951 with these same covers. I've used a company called L-Seat. It's lseat.com, and full leather. They do a great job, and it's kind of a small operation, so you might wait a little bit, but the quality's there and the support's there as well. So just want to kind of give you a little tour of the seat for people who aren't familiar with it. These particular seats are manual. So they've got a power pedestal. So they've got 4 jack screws at each corner that adjust the position of the seat. But the back is manual and the slider is manual. So the process can be pretty much the same with just some more components with the full power seats and some more cables. And I can find some pictures, and I actually have some videos of doing those. And if anybody wants to ping me and have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer, having done those as well. But essentially what you're going to do is you're going to go through and take off all of the accessories on the seat. So like this adjuster, this doesn't go through the seat, but the cover goes behind it. And this is the area that we're going to be repairing, just refinishing. On this particular seat, these will go away because I have black ones to replace them with. Up here, these handles on both sides, I'm going to show you how to remove those. You want to kind of get in there flat and pull them straight out, because if you try twisting them or pulling them, you end up breaking them. And just spoiler alert, you'll probably end up breaking them anyways. So if you're going to start the job, you might as well. They're pretty inexpensive. I'd buy a couple, because even if you don't break it doing this, you're going to break them eventually. I mean, you're talking about 30-year-old plastic with like a 1/4 inch receptacle in there. So, I'd probably get some of those. And let me show you the underside of this seat. So this one has 2 motors. There's a motor here and a motor here. And those, again, drive these screw jacks in the corners. That gives you your seats leveling. And they have drive cables that go to them. And then here's the power. This is the power for the switch. And what I would do is, before you take the seat out, really test it and see how happy you are with the adjustments, whether it's the back, the slider, any of the power functions, because right now is the optimal time to do some maintenance on those. If you have a motor that's soft, it's great to find a used one that's in good condition or buy a new one. And it's just gonna, while you have everything apart, it's gonna make a world of difference. And then all these cables, so these are like a splined drive cable, and that's how the whole seat's driven for the most part. These come off, and what I would probably do is take these out and take the wire out of them, clean them, and then apply a little grease and put them back in there, because it's going to give you a lot of use long term. And it's also going to smooth out the function of the seat. Same thing with the seat rails. These seats are in great condition, but I'm going to probably take these down, and I'm going to refinish the bottoms of them, just because seats are one of those things that come in and out of the car. So if you have any corrosion or anything gross under here, it's going to transfer to your carpet, and it's nice when you pull out the seat to have it look like it's brand new. So I'll be refinishing those. I'll be cleaning and lubricating these channels. Again, these are manual. Excuse me, getting over a cold. So here's the manual adjuster. It's got a bar that comes over, and it pulls out the prongs to release the slider so you can move it. Pretty simple design. There would be just an additional motor under here mounted on a plate if it's a seat that has power slide. And then it has drive cables that go down and hook into these and move these back and forth. So there's also one of the things with this car that's kind of problematic, all the Porsches at this age. There's a manual adjustment up here for the, or excuse me, a manual gear for moving the seat if the power doesn't work. Because the issue is that if the power doesn't work, the bolt holes can be covered by the track. So to get the seat in and out, you have to move the seat all the way back and then all the way forward and get the bolts out from there. But if you're to this point, you've probably learned that already. But if it's not working, then you have to go in and use this manual gear here and turn it, and hopefully the seat moves. But unfortunately, it's a nylon gear. And so if you're in there, I'll try and find some pictures of it, but if you're in there, you probably want to replace that nylon gear. And if you do find yourself in a position where you have to turn it, it's more than likely that it's going to strip out and break because it's, 30 years old at the newest, I think, unless somebody's replaced it. But what you can do is on this one, there's a transmission and the cables come into each side. And you can actually release these cables. There's a wire, you can kind of see it here. There's a wire bracket that basically is shaped like this, and it clips underneath the cables and then around the back to hold them on. If you take that off, which we'll do later, then the tubes will slide off and you can get to the cables inside. So on the front, if you're unable to get the seat to move, you can actually take those out. And what I've done is I've taken a drill and just tighten the chuck down. It's a square wire. So you just tighten the chuck down on the wire that's in the seat, and you just slowly pull it until it moves a little bit. It's a tedious process, but if you just go back and forth between the two cables doing the same thing, then you'll be able to move the seat and get to the bolts. And again, if you've gotten this far, I would probably lubricate and clean those. Just wash them up good and clean out the tubing and put some new grease on them. You don't have to go super heavy-handed, but just something to keep them flowing as free as possible, because a lot of years of people sliding up and down on those things will wear them out pretty quick. What else under here? So one of the things you'll notice is that the seat, this mesh is what's holding the pad on, and the wire frame, the spring frame for this, has these clips that hold it centered. They hold these springs together so they don't separate. But then additionally, you'll see that there are areas where it has a hog ring. And the hog ring goes through, and there's actually a material backing to this pad. So it has something to grab onto. It goes through there and then crimps around that material and holds the pad down. It doesn't do a ton of work because the pad is sitting on there, but it just holds it down so if you're messing with the seat, you're not pulling the pad up. And let's see here. You can, if you have the seat out already, you can put power to the switch with just like a battery charger. It's just 12 volt. And you can operate the switches and test them and make sure they're functioning properly. One of the things that people will often do is find a switch that sticks or doesn't work. And you can replace it with a brand new one, certainly, but these switches can be repaired. You can find information online how to repair them. It's just something that you can't do in the car. So if you have the seat out of the car, then you can repair the switches. Particularly with the four-way switches, the problem is that you have to lay it flat, and there's 4 bearings in there, and they have to be at the contact points for the 4 areas where they touch as you put the cover back on. And you do all of this after you go in and clean all the contacts with some really fine sandpaper, like some 800 grit, and clean them up really good. And I've brought probably 6 or 7 different switches back to life that way. Sometimes it's just broken, but you'll know that pretty quick because the plastic is usually destroyed. Excuse me. So, what else under here? The other thing I would do is clean and lubricate these slides regardless. If it's a manual slide, it just sits on this track. If it's a power slide, it's got a jack screw that goes through there. You want to clean and lubricate it. And then the screws that go through for the leveling, you can see this one's way in there because the front's tilted up. This one's out because the back's tilted down. What I would do is run those all the way up so that the most of the receptacle hole is showing. Clean them out really good with a pipe cleaner. and then put some grease in there and grease them up good. And then run them all the way down and then wipe off the bottom so there's no grease hanging out there. And that'll be plenty to keep it running smooth for years. For the pivot, you'll see there's a pivot on each side, and that's why I had the 19mm socket, because we'll take that off. And this is actually a sliding pivot, so it rotates on the spot, and then it also lifts because you can have all 4 of the jack screws up and it will lift. But essentially that's kind of the makeup of the seat. We're going to remove all the accessories. One thing with the power back, if you have a seat with a power back, the motor for the back is actually right here in the headrest. So it's one of those things where if you're going to be in there and you have any doubt about that motor, there's only one way to that motor, and it's the way that you're going in to change the seat cover. It essentially has the motor, and then it has 2 drive lines that come down to this hinge. And even if yours works great, I would probably clean those up, lubricate them, make sure they're not frayed, broken, stretched, any of that stuff, because they're just tough to get to. Excuse me. And again, this is the best time to do it. As far as, like, I think I covered this already, but these, when you're removing those, make sure to be careful. Don't twist them or torque on them because you'll just break them. Again, you'll probably break them anyways. But yeah, essentially this seat's in really good condition. These came out of a really nice 964, and they'll look good in black going in my wife's wide body 964. So let's get to work. So I really quickly want to go over some of the tools that I'm using for this job. I've got the Milwaukee tools here. Because the seat has a little bit of corrosion on the bottom of the seat rails, I'm going to use a sander. This is Orbital with a mesh pad on it to take off some of that corrosion, smooth it out, and that way I can paint it. Just an impact driver, and then probably my favorite tool is the right angle driver, and that'll let me get off some of the heavier corrosion. There is some surface rust around the seatbelt receptacle, and I wanted to get that off just because it's a crucial part of the car. It's just surface, but nonetheless, I want to take off any corrosion while I'm in there and hit it with some zinc primer and top coat it with some black. Everything else here besides the hog ring pliers are going to be things you'll probably find. The hog ring pliers come with an amount of hog rings that usually you will do 100 seats and never get to the bottom of those. One thing I would add is that the hog ring pliers I have here, I need to get back from a friend, the right angle ones, because the right angle ones allow you to get in some of the contours, and it's kind of essential. Other than that, all pretty much common tools you're going to find in your own garage already. I've got just some tools for prying. This is called a bone. A lot of people will use those for different things. Pry bars. It's actually a tool that window installers use. So if you've got a window install place, they usually have a case of these things. You can stop by and ask them for a bone, and they'll give you one, and a funny look probably. Just a ratchet, 17mm will get off the seatbelt receptacle, assortment of screwdrivers, some channel locks, just a little hammer for tapping things and freeing them up. And then just a couple of assorted snips. There are some electrical connections that have zip ties. And then the heavier snips are going to be for getting out the existing hog rings. What I'll do, and the one item I don't have here is needle nose pliers. I'll add those to this collection, and that allows you to get in there and pull out some of these hog rings. But as far as tools go, this thing, the hog ring plier, is essentially a stapler. It's spring-loaded, so you can put one in there and it'll hold it. And let me see what one of these looks like. So it's just basically an offset staple. And then when you squeeze it, again, these are spring-loaded. It locks around things, whether that be material, different parts of the seat, which you'll see, and then also the 10 milli. That's going to get in the areas and for the seat jacks, and I'll show you some of that stuff as well. But as I said, nothing too fancy or exotic here. Most of the things you'll have in these hog ring pliers, you can buy a set of them on Amazon or anywhere else for dirt cheap, and most of them will come with the hog rings as well. So the first step in this process is I'm going to take off all the accessories, everything outstanding here. Per my usual trick, I'm going to use sandwich bags and a Sharpie to label everything because, well, my memory's just not all that great anymore. But essentially what we're going to do is we're going to separate the two halves so that we can work on them individually, because you have to remove and reinstall covers on them. So what we're going to do is we're going to start taking everything off here, bagging it up, and getting on our way. So the hinge covers just have a couple of Phillips screws to get those out. And I have some black ones I'm going to be replacing them with. But if you're changing the color of your seats and you don't want to go out, these can be kind of spendy, actually. And often, again, you're going to find ones that are broken or on their kind of their last leg. So what you can do is you can clean them up really good, scuff them up good, and then use some cleaner degreaser on them. Spray them with the light coat of adhesion promoter, and then use black paint on them. And SEM makes some great plastic paints, and you could do that, and it really bites into this plastic, so you'd have to really get after it pretty hard. You'd have to gouge it pretty hard to get a decent scratch out of it. But here's the hinge. And again, Recaro was big fans of their stickers. They have them everywhere. This is the release mechanism here. And it is got a little C-clip on a bar that's fused onto the metal, and it holds this just S-shaped hinge, and it goes, cable, and it goes through here. The end of the cable is seated in there. Be careful when this thing comes off, because it is a pain in the rear. If it gets lost, you'll look for it forever. So again, it's kind of impossible with one hand to show you how this works, but generally what I'll do is I'll put something thin under the front of here, and then use on the top the bone to get under there and just pry straight up, and just kind of gently wheel it until it comes off. The surround is much easier. You just get an edge of anything underneath there, and it pops right out. There you go. So again, this is the arm that is activated by the side pulls. And on the manual seat, you're just going to undo the screw. And then the arm works off the end of that post. And I'll probably have to use two hands, but just know that's what you do. You just pull it straight off. One thing I always suggest is to get a good picture of all the stuff you're taking apart. And you might even want to put a ruler up here, knowing that this is about 1 inch. You're not going to cut anything until you have the seat cover on and you need to make room. But it's just a good idea to remember. You'll have some reference as to what it looked like before. Same thing with all this stuff. The orientation can be confusing sometimes, and having some pictures of it helps a great deal. With some of these bolts, like the seatbelt receptacle bolt, you want to give it a good couple whacks on the end there. And you might even throw some penetrant in there and let it sit overnight if you're getting any resistance. You don't want to strip these out because it just turns into a nightmare. But just some good hard hits on it will loosen it up. It'll wake the bolt up and make it a lot easier to get out. Some of the things you want to take a look at and take notice of in some pictures maybe as you're taking this apart, and we'll get there, but is you just want to understand how things kind of fit together and take pictures of them. For instance, the seat back, the center of the back cushion here, this is one piece that connects down the sides and the front, and then it goes underneath and connects up here, and then the seat back comes down and connects under. So it's good to just kind of take some pictures and just understand how it all goes back together, just because it's going to be going back in the same order it came off. So the next step is just to remove these two back bolts. It's a 15 mm. have somebody hold that for you, or tilt the seat forward as well. One thing I would note on here is there was thread locker on these, so I would probably put some back on there as well. So now we have the two seat halves separated, the top and the bottom. What we're going to do is just set the top aside for now because it's pretty much ready to tear down and take this cover off. But we still have some work to do on the bottom. For the seatbelt receptacle, I went with a 17-inch and a breaker bar, just a nice, easy breaker bar to break it loose. I didn't have to use any penetrant or anything. So I just went nice and easy, and it came undone. It should also be noted that there is a spring washer that goes in between the receptacle hole and the receptacle itself. So it goes a bolt through a washer, through the receptacle, through the spring washer, into the seat. And I'll look at the torque settings before I set this out. I can't recall what they are. So what we're going to do is go at each corner where the jack screws are. There are 3 10mm bolts. There's the last one here. However, at this corner, because it's a manual slide, there is 2 4mm and a 10mm, because the 4mm are hidden behind the bar. So you can get a wrench in there. They put hex head Allens in there instead. So we'll get those out with a 4mm. Now there's a center pivot bolt kind of hidden back here. And what we need to do is get those off because they're connected to the seat rail and that pivot point is welded on. So it's kind of what the seat is able to tip on. And there's one on each side as well. So at each corner, there are 4 fasteners that hold the rails to the jack screws. One on each is obscured behind the seat rail, so you have to move the seat rail to expose it. So to remove the rails, what you do is, it's got this washer that goes on the inside of there. A bolt comes through the front, you can see the end of the bolt there, and then the nut we took off, the 19mm, it goes onto there. But what you have to do is this flange here is kind of flimsy. And all you have to do is pull it up and then pull the rail out off of the stud. And then it's disconnected. What we'll have to do next is disconnect the connection between the two for the slider mechanism. And essentially all that is just a cap that goes on here. It pulls off, and then there's another sleeve inside of here. You can probably see it there. That releases the bar. And then the two are separated. And the same thing is over here. Just to give you a little idea what that looks like, is this, I just pulled that out a little bit with some channel locks, enough to where I could get a screwdriver behind it, and then pop it off the rest of the way. And then the rest is pretty simple, pretty self-explanatory. So what we're going to do here is disconnect the motors. You want to take note of how the wires are oriented. This one's obviously green is closest to the bottom of the car, and the one with the purple stripe is on the side. And, it's not going to hurt it to hook it backwards, but it's a little frustrating probably when you go push up and it goes down. So what we're going to do is, if you look here, this is that clip we talked about. It's just a spring clip that holds the wires in, the cables in. On the shorter ones, they don't have a sheath on them. They're just floating in there, but it gives you an idea of what they look like. And you can still lubricate the ends where they go into the transmissions or the motors. But releasing that clip will allow you to disconnect the cable. I probably need 2 hands for this, but you can disconnect the cable from the motor, and then you can do the same thing at the transmission, or excuse me, the 4-corner screw jacks if you want to. You can disconnect them there, and that's probably what you should do because you're going to want to lubricate all of these as well. So I almost forgot, but by loosening these screws, and there's actually washers that go in between the screw and this plate that they're underneath, you slide it up, and then this is the electrical connection to the switch on the outside of the seat. and we're going to go ahead and take that apart. It's a little bit more in depth, so I'll go through that as well. But at this point, we can also start getting everything out of the way, and should be well on our way. And again, with these motors that control the back jack screws, we do the same. We're gonna pop off the spring clip, and then that allows us to pull the motor out, or the drive shaft. As you can see, the end of the shaft is square, and it fits in the square receptacle on the motor. But you're gonna want to check these. Again, we're gonna pull them out and clean them, but you just want to make sure they're not frayed, or anywhere down here they could be twisted where they're they bound up and unwound. Those are all things you want to look for. You want to just check for smooth functionality. Like this one, doesn't really move a ton, in between the spots where it can. It's obviously connected to the jack screw still, but if you pull it out a little bit, you can still spin it. It could be a little bit better, so we're going to clean that up. You want to make sure that you're not manipulating the jack screws, because they're set at a height that you took it out at, so you don't want to get them off at all, or else you have some adjusting to do, which means seat coming out, motors coming off. So the electrical connector between the seat power from the car, and the switch comes through this plate up from what would be the top. You want to just get a screwdriver in there and twist it a little bit so that you can get it back to the point where it'll fall through here, and makes it a little bit easier to work with. And there is your pigtail from the car power to the seat switch power. Disconnected. There's only one way it goes together, so it's not too tough to get back in the right position. As you disconnect these drive wires, it's not a bad idea to bag them individually and label them where they came from. Take some pictures, and also just the path that they go. And you'll also see that they have things zip tied to them in other places. Just take some good pictures. A lot of this stuff will still be bent in the form it's in now, so it's not hard to tell. But the big thing is when you go from side to side, you want to make sure that you are working with the right side and it's the correct orientation, because they're kind of formed and bent already in a certain position. So you want to make life easy for yourself and make sure they go back in that position. It's not a bad idea if you have some nail polish or something to put a dot on the top of them. That's what I like to do also. I probably won't this time just because I've done it so many times. But, and when you're working with them, don't take them all out of their Ziploc bags at the same time and clean them. Work with them individually, and put them back in their respective bags. When you're working with these cables, it's a good idea to mark them, just so that you don't get them confused. Take some good pictures of the routing of them as well, and the places where they're zip tied, because the electrical connections are zip tied to the drive cables in a lot of spots. And for the most part, they'll still be bent into this shape, and it won't be too tough to figure out. But having some good pictures, just because it gets a little confusing under here sometimes. And then also the other recommendation I would make is not to have them all out of their bags if you have them in Ziploc bags at the same time. Take one out, clean it, put it back in the bag so that you don't get them mixed up. Label the bags, know where they go, and make sure to retain all the clips as well. When you cut these zip ties off of here, take special care to make sure that you don't get into the wires, because they'll cause a nightmare for yourself. If I can get to it, I always prefer to cut the nub off of the fastener. Just that easy. Again, try to take a very good visual, maybe photographic accounting of how everything is routed through here, because it does get a little tight putting things back in. So you want to make sure that this thing's running underneath those cables, and where they're fastened at. I've already cut some off here, but you just want to pay close attention where they're zip tied at, and so you can recreate it. And again, on this motor, the purple stripe is going to go on the side, and the green stripe is going to go on the top, what would be facing the top of the seat bottom, I guess. So at this point, what you're going to want to do is go around and start pulling back these tangs that hold the cover on. They're all around the perimeter. There's a few areas where it's going to be hog-tied. You'll want to cut those or pull the hog ties apart and take them out, whichever's easiest for you. Mostly back along here. And then, that's basically the process of removing the cover, because it's got these tangs all the way around the perimeter. You can see them here. One thing I will say is these things are nasty. So if you can, avoid working with them, without long sleeves on, particularly if, you come from a cool or a wet climate and they're rusty, things like that, because if they get a hold of you, they're pretty nasty. I've gotten gouged by one before. So when they're all up like this, you just want to be extra careful. One very simple way to get these undone also is take a screwdriver and drive it in there and use it to pry it open, and they come off pretty easily. I'd probably only do that if you weren't planning on using these covers again. These look dirty right now, but these are actually pretty good covers. They'll clean up nice, so somebody can get some use out of these. So I'll probably be a little bit careful with them. Once you get all of the clips, the hog clips, out of the back of the seat, from the crack where the hinge is, then it's kind of the beginning, and then it starts to reveal itself. And not bad leather for 30 plus years. Another thing you will run into is this wire. This wire comes out of the seam and is used to tighten it against the back here. It's just kind of like safety wired, if you're familiar with airplane safety wiring. But it just pulls it taut, and you just use the springs to tie it to from each side, and keeps the perimeter nice and stable. And again, if you're doing a repair to the seat, or you plan on these being reused, or you think they're reusable, don't cut the wire that comes out of the seam around the perimeter, because you will want to retain it. So just unfasten it and let it free. So you just go around the perimeter and maybe just use a screwdriver to get under the tangs and pull them up. You want to not manipulate them any more than you have to. I mean, at the end of the day, they are still just metal that's being bent. So, I just pull them up to the point where you can pull the cover off. Don't bend them to the point where it just slides off. You want them to be still facing inward a little bit, so you're not overstressing them, because the new one you're going to pull tight and put on them anyways. All right, at this point, we are completely separated from the seat, with the exception of the switches. The switches take a little something extra, so I'm going to tackle that now. Essentially, we're just going to take off this faceplate to start. It's only a couple of Phillips screws. So the switch is a little tricky. Typically at this point, people, if they're not familiar with them, the first thing they want to do is start pulling these off the back or taking this apart. If you do that, what happens is the bearings in there that are the contact points fall out, and you end up with a bit of a nightmare. The switches come with these wires on them already. So what you have to do is you have to go to here, take this plug apart, pull those out, and then run them through, because they're in separate holes here. So they go through two different holes. You want to make sure the switch is orientated right, where the big flat bottom goes towards the bottom of the seat also. And then just draw yourself a picture or take a picture of how the wire orientation is, to ensure that you get them back in the same spot. It's not a bad idea to put some tape on them, just for orientation to the plug itself also. But the plug comes apart fairly easily. Those plugs pull out of there. You put the switch back through when you have the new seat cover installed and have cut out a hole for it. You plug them back in, rejoin them as a pair, and you're off to the races. Ideally, what you want to do to get this cap off of here, it's got a ridge down both sides that clasps over the side and locks. Use something like a file or something broad. Just kind of peel it back and run it down the seam on one side, and once that one side gives up, the rest will come out. So then make your diagram of where the plugs go, pull them out of this orientation, run them through, And then I would probably put the plug back together, or at least tape it together, just so you have it oriented properly, even though it's going to be sitting out of the car while you finish the seat. This is a pretty simple way here. You just put a piece of tape around one of them, and there's only one way the plug will fit into the socket. So so long as you get the end going in the side that has the recess for the wires to come through, and you match up the way you put it back together that you took it apart, you should be fine. This way, I also know that the front switch is the one with the tape on it. I almost forgot. There are also 2 more hog rings back here on each side that hold the flaps around the side of the seat. We'll look at this more as we put the new cover on, but there's also an area down here that's a saddle for the seat to sit in. We'll show. Along the back edges here, you're going to have a few areas that are stapled as well to the foam, with a clinch staple. They're not difficult to get out. They pull straight out, but just be aware that they're there. So essentially, you just start at the back and pull the cushion forward, and the cushion and cover come off together, and you are left with just the seat itself. So what you want to do is just run your hand in the seat and try and separate the cover from the bunting. There'll be spots in the factory where sometimes they have layered up some bunting to make the seat fit right. But also you don't want to tear this cover if you can help it. It's inevitable some of it's going to get messed up, but the less the better. When you get into the side of the seat, it's going to reveal the hog clips that go through the seat that go onto the seat frame, and it keeps the sides tucked in and it keeps the seat tight. Take your time on these steps because you don't want to damage the cushion as much as possible. So just pull it back gently, and then you should be able to get in there to be able to snip those clips. What it is, just like the seat perimeter, there's a wire that runs through the bottom and through both sides that you hook the hog clips to. It's a slow process, but you just gently work the cover off and try not to damage the cushion, and it'll come off. Voila, just like that. We have a cushion and we have a cover. One thing some people tend to do at this point, if they want to, if you're in a wet climate and you have any odors or any of those things that come along with wet climates, you can actually take these cushions, all of them, put them in a bag or a garbage can, and go rent a reverse osmosis machine from an ozone generator from a rental place. It's like $20 a day, and it'll take out any of the smells. So start checking out the L seat cover. This is the underside of it. It's foam backed, pretty high quality. The top side, it's a little dirty from sitting on the shelf for a while without a cover on it, but looks to be the ticket. Just a quick test fit, make sure it fits right. It's baggy and blousy and not pulled tight, but looks the part. So I've gone ahead and cleaned up the seat bottom, and what you want to do is just make sure that none of these clips between the seat springs are broken. Make sure they're not disconnected in the back here anywhere. And the seat's actually in really good condition. I just cleaned it up a little bit. It's one of those things where if you're hunting something that falls into your seat, you can reach under there confidently knowing you're not going to come out with a handful of grease. But what we're going to do is go ahead and start kind of pre-fitting this thing. I've got the cushion here, and it slips around the surround for the buttons on this side. It kind of fits in a slot there. And then over here, it goes along the outside, and you just want to make sure you get this over the latch if you've got this here for the manual adjuster. And then you can see the seats split. down both bolsters and then in the center. And there's different theories on how to do this. What I like to do is I like to mount the flap from the seat bottom in this one first and pull it down tight against the springs, and then do each side, pulling it tight front and back, and then doing the front and then the back. And of course, you've got all these pieces on the side that overlay and overlap. But you know, I've found that that gives you the best tight fit, and you want to really get it cinched down in here and through here, because that's what holds the bottom flat. And then from there, it's just stretching over the top and bringing it down on these sides to clamp all around here. It just makes for a much better fitting seat, and you don't get blousing. And you know, with new seat covers, you'll get that sometimes. There are some things you can do, like I'm sure people have seen on YouTube, where you can go out and you can use a heat gun on the foam. You want to do it very carefully, but you can actually use a heat gun to expand the foam. These foams are in really good condition, and the seat cover is going to be tight anyways, so I'm not going to do anything to it other than just make sure everything's smooth. But you can, if you've got a flat spot in your cushion, sometimes you can plump it back up. You just want to be really careful on doing it, because you know, you don't want to hurt the foam cells. So we'll go ahead and get to work putting this thing back on. So looking at the seat bottom of the new cover, some of the things you'll notice is that this is the channel. So this flap is the one that goes down inside the crevice here on each side for the bolsters. In these covers, as well as any others you should buy, they'll have a channel. So we're going to take the rod out of the old seat covers and put them in here. And what that does is allows us to have something for the hog rings to clamp onto and give it some stability, and actually pull it down and keep it secure in that crevice. And same thing here. This is the first time I've seen that had the ends sewn. So I will probably just make a slit in the ends, and at least in one of these ends here, and run the piece in there. And then it's the same thing. It's just a wire rod that allows you to pull this down into this area here and hold it tight to the spring underneath. So here we are. You can just actually pull this out, and see it has a loop on each end. It's just a pretty stout wire rod, and there's one on both sides, and then also one here in the center. We'll take those all out and put them in the new seat covers. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the new rod, and hard to do one hand in here, but thread it in to the channel for the seat. And so you can see it sticking out this end and out this. And we'll do that for both sides. And then for this one, I'm just going to make a little slit in here, enough to get this rod in there. And then once it's upright, it'll just drop into the bottom, and you can manipulate it inside there. So the other one you want to make sure you grab is the one out of the back of the old seat that fits through the channel in here. This one again is to secure the bottom. So to place this bar, I actually decided to cut this loose, so it just hangs down, because I want to pull straight down into the gap in the cushion. And I don't, if it's connected up here still, it's going to pull on this and make for an awkward seam along here. So this bar will sit inside there, and it should just pretty much hang there, and it shouldn't make any difference not having it connected up here. Again, it's the first time I've seen that. So this is actually the way in which the old seat works. So we're going to go ahead and put that in there. So now the bar's in there. It's placed in here, you can see. And it's a little bit short on each side, just like it was on the other one. But you really only need to put probably 3 hog rings in here. And this just holds it down in the center, keeps the bottom flat. So it should be noted here also that some people subscribe to the school of thought that it's best to put some talcum powder on the cushions, because it helps the cover slide over it easier when you're adjusting it and fitting them. That's not really a problem with these, because it's pretty smooth under there. It doesn't have a whole lot of grip to it. However, if you have sport seats with bigger bolsters on the top and the bottom, it makes a little bit more sense. But again, these are in really good condition, and they've still got retained their felt. And I probably won't have to do anything on here. The top the seat back fits a little bit tighter. So, you know, it could come in handy there, but I've never had to do it. I just thought I'd make a note of that as well. So as you prepare to put the cover on, a couple of things you want to do is just make sure you smooth out the felt if you have it remaining as best you can. It's not going to be problematic usually, but if it's big and bunched up in a big glob of it, there's a chance that that will transfer through and show in your seat cover. Because what will happen is the covers generally fit a little bit loose. It may not seem like it when you're putting them on, but they're still slightly loose. And what will happen is over time with heat, they'll tighten up. Sometimes if people have bolsters or cushions that are worn, they get kind of a blousy effect with the covers. And a heat gun and just, let them sit out in the sun will usually tighten that up. But again, these cushions are in really good condition, so I'm gonna have a little bit of a struggle getting them over the side to connect them. But the other thing I did want to note is the wire from the old cover that went around the perimeter bottom is not in the seat, and I haven't had one with it in there before. You can run a wire, but the other thing that I usually do, and I'll probably do this time, is I'll just cut lengths of wire coat hanger and slide them in there. And there's cuts along this thing in different spots, so you can slide the pieces in there and then just pull the coat hanger down to the bottom. And all that does is when the tangs on the bottom go through the material and loop over and clasp down, it just gives them something to hold on to and distribute the weight along the seam a little bit better. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and start fitting this, and you're going to fit from front to back. So put the nose of the seat on first, then go back and get everything down in your crevices here, and then start fastening. You want to pull it tight, and it's a little bit of a pain in the rear, but the end result you'll be happy with. As you fit the seat, this bar in the center, it's just kind of loose in there, so you just want to make sure that it stays in there when you're placing it in the seat. Once it's in this channel, the ends will keep the bar from sliding anywhere, so it's fine. But just as you're manipulating it off of the cover or off of the cushion, you want to make sure that you keep it centered in there at least best as possible. So one of the things you can do to make this center part a little bit easier, this is the one that goes through the seat cushion almost to the back of the seat and holds it down to the springs underneath, is you can put some hog rings in here so that it's easier to fish it through and find those hog rings and connect them to the seat spring on the bottom. And that's what I'm gonna do here. I'm just gonna put 3 in here. That's really all it takes. It's just, space 3 across here. And then you can fish them out from the bottom and connect hog rings through the spring and through the hog ring that's already on here. Or you can pull it tight and put a hog ring through the bar again. The other thing you can do is you can pull it tight, put a piece of hanger or wire across the seat bottom on the outside of the cushion, and that will hold it in place as well. So as you can see here, what I've done is I've loaded one of the hog rings into the pliers, and I've already put one in here. So you just pull the bar down to its lowest point as it would sit with the seat in, and so it's all the way against the edge here, and then try and clamp it as close to the edge as you can. I put one on the center, and I put one more on each side to use to hold it down. It might be kind of difficult with one hand, but essentially all you do is just position the pliers over the area, squeeze, and there you go. Now it's hooked onto that bar. I'll put one more in here, and then we'll be ready to rock and roll. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and get this cover on here. Again, you want to make sure that these are all smoothed out as best you can. And then also make sure everything's fit around the seat cushion. We're going to get this to a point where we can get this channel back here in the center of the seat, push through so we can fasten it down. But once we get the cover on, we're going to have to go back through here and work these side wires down into the jam as well, so we can pull those through. But first and foremost, we're going to get it centered over this one so that we can pull that down and get it cinched up, and then we'll pull the sides in and do the same there. The easiest thing to do is to, once you have the cover on, go back here. You want to make sure, obviously, the outside part of the seat is on the outside and the flange is on here on the inside. And then you can just grab it by here and pull it so it pulls tighter on the nose. And that's going to get this flap across the center here centered so you can get it down in where it belongs. And then what you have to do is go back and run a hand inside here. And this one, the flange that hangs down with the wires in here, you just kind of have to work them into that crack. And you know, just kind of as you go, you just get from the top, you can kind of pull it. Once you have it in there, you can kind of feel where it's at and push it down in the crack as you go. And again, anytime you need to, you can pull from the back here so it pulls it tighter on the nose and makes it a little bit easier to work with. Another way to help get this fitted is to reach under here and you just use your hand to grab that bar and that flange and pull it so it's pulling the nose tight. And then as you do, you can kind of feel with your hand, just push the flange down into that hole in the seat. And then what we're going to do is go from the other side and find these hog ties that we put in here and hog tie them to the spring. So what you want to do is, once you can run a hand up inside the seat from the back here and kind of get it started, get that wire started in these bolsters, side bolsters. Once you have it in there, you just want to go through and just make sure it's as far in there as you can get it down each side. The idea is that you want to have this so that when it's pulled tight along these bars, those wires and this wire, it's going to make the center of the seat pretty flat, and then the sides will even themselves out when you pull them tight. But the idea is you want to just make sure and get out all the blousiness up on top as you can by pulling it tight on each side when you pull it down through and connect it to the springs. So once you have it all the way into that bolster crack, then you want to reach from the inside, make sure that your center wire is going through, and you can actually pull it if it's too far forward. It's likely to be. You can just grab it, pull it a little tighter and stuff it down into that crack that runs from side to side. And then we'll get from the other side. Now there's a couple ways you can handle this center wire here. So on the other side of this pad is where that center wire is that holds the seat bottom down. And you can see here where it was connected before. So you have a pretty good idea of where it should connect. If you reach from the other side, you can push the bar in, and I can feel it. Like if I push from this side, I can feel it from this side. And you can actually just take the hog ring pliers and go straight over the top of this one and grab that, grab the rod on the other side. Or you can go through there with a small pick and grab the wires, grab the rings that you already put on there or the wire, and pull it tight and do the same thing. The idea is you just want to get it connected to these springs so it doesn't move and it's centered. So on this one, I'm just going to go and push the bar from the other side. Spread my fingers out so that it's on each side of the bar so I don't hog ring my fingers. And I can press it to where I can feel it against this one, and then I'll just run a hog ring through both of them. So as you can see, this is the side that's attached over here. I'm just going to do the same thing, and you can actually pull it by this rod if you need to get some more leverage to pull it down tight into that crevice. And I'll do the center one next. I'll push it down in there, push it from this side, and connect it around one of these. All right, so now we have 3 across here connected to the springs. Got the center connected inside the seat, and now we can start working on the side bolsters. So now that we have the center connected across here, what we're going to do is we're going to go back and make sure and tuck these bolsters, that bolster seam and wire, in as far as we can, because it's going to help pull this flat. And then we're going to go ahead and start attaching it to the spring. With this one, it's the same thing with these side bolsters. You're just going to find it from this side, push through with your fingers, and fish through till you find it over here and connect it to one of these. And you're going to do 3 up this side, 3 up the next side as well. All right, so I've got 3 across the center, 3 across each side, and we're going to move on to tightening up the sides. Now we're gonna use some good old-fashioned American hangers, probably Chinese actually, but you get the idea. I'm gonna cut these into strips and use them for filler along some of these areas to help hold it. So what I did here is I just cut out one of the, it's hard to see here, but just one of the sides of this hanger and ran it through this hole in the end over here to the center. So it's gonna hit these 3 tangs and just give it some strength there when you pull on it and when you sit, and just over time it'll wanna work loose or rip. This will help it from doing that. So the bottom part of the hanger, if you cut off these little hooked ends, is the perfect length to run down this side here and hit all those tangs. So on these sides, depending on where the hole's at, there was one here. So what I did is I threaded the hanger piece into here and past this corner. I really wanted to hit right past here, but I ran it past this corner so that it went all the way inside, and then I pushed it back up so it's all the way inside the side of the bolster, and it's gonna hit this tang. One of the tricks you can use for getting the this bar and this edge over the tangs is also to use a clamp to draw the pad down and make it a little bit easier. So now at this point, we've got the front of the seat hooked underneath on the tangs, got the bolster sides drawn down and the center side drawn down. Now what we'll do is we'll take out some of these wrinkles, and probably a little bit of it will stay, and it'll just have to shrink over time or take the heat gun to it. But we just want to get this all as flat as possible. So what you're going to do is just work your way up the side, making sure you get the cover as well as the piece of hanger or wire, whatever you're using, on the other side of the tank to help hold and support it. And just work your way up, pulling it tight. It's a little bit of a challenge. You can use a clamp if you need to draw the pad down, but it can be done. So at this point, all of our perimeter tangs are secured and the cover's tight around the sides. Now we move on to the back. And as you can see, pulled the sides down nice. A lot of that blousing is out of there now, and some of that will disappear as we stretch it as well. But then we probably won't even need to take a heat gun to this. So it'll just pull out on its own. For the area around the hinges, you'll see you've got all these darts cut in this fabric, the leather around these. And if you look at the old one, or you look at the photos you took, there's a very particular way in which they lay on each other to fit down underneath here and connect to the pad with either an inside or an outside clinch stapler. I suppose you could probably use hog rings too if you wanted to, because it's all hidden. But I'm going to go ahead and set that up, and then should pull these corners down tight. There's going to be a little bit of blousing here still, but I think we'll be able to get most of this out of here once we get these corners tight. And then also, it needs to have a little bit of give here so that as it does tighten up and it takes out the blousing naturally, it doesn't rip. So I did this side. It's not fastened in yet, but I've got everything tucked in. And you can see all these flaps get tucked down and overlap each other here in the back in this corner, and then get connected together. The only one that stays is the one on the very outside. And it's going to go up against here. And then this rides in the saddle. The seam here sits in the saddle and covers it partially. And of course, it wraps around here. And then the back flap comes down with the bar in it and gets connected underneath. So essentially what you're doing here is in this back corner, from the top, you're going to fold these flanges underneath, and they're going to, 2 of them will go from the side. This one will pull from the back. So you put the 2 sides down first, and then the one that sticks out the back of the seat, you pull over the top of them, and then you're going to fasten it however you choose to. I'm just using hog clips because that's what I have, hog rings. I do have an outside clinch stapler around here, and that's how they were originally, but I don't think it's super important. Just to show you how I'm doing it, I'm pulling the first one, the one towards the frontmost part of the seat, over and back. Then the next one that's on the side, I'm pulling over the top of it. And then the last one, I'm pulling from the front of this, so it's pulling the front of the seat tight, wrapping it around, so they all 3 come together at this corner, and I'm gonna hog clip it right here. So now that we have the corners buttoned up, we're gonna put this seam through that saddle right there. Just a lip that it hooks through, and guides it, and you can pull it tight. And we'll do that on both sides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this tight around here. And then there's a piece of piping in here. I'm just going to put a hog ring on this to the seat pad here. And we'll do that on both sides. And the flap will come up over the top. And this is, again, is the one with the bar in it. So we'll connect those to the springs up here. And this will pretty much be done as far as covering it goes. All right, got both sides piping connected to the seat bottom cushion in the back. And now we're going to put the flap up over and put our hog rings into these springs. So the idea is we want to get this nice and tight, take out any blousing we can. It's got the bar in here, so what we want to do is hog ring through here and then through places along here once it's nice and tight. All right, so I went ahead and put 4 hog rings across this back here because it gets a lot of pull there from just plopping your butt down. So can't be too careful. Should be nice and tight. So there we go. We've still got some work to do. It came a little blousy back in this corner and along here. I'll probably take the heat gun to that, but I'll wait. I'm gonna, the thing to remember is all this stuff will tighten up. The whole cover is gonna tighten up over a pretty short order. Just one, a couple nice hot summer days. You can take the heat gun to it, but you gotta do it carefully. I will probably just bring this in the house and let it relax. But that stuff will all come out. And there's a little bit of mar here just from being folded and messed around, but it will tighten up, and the bolster and beading's nice even, and the sides aren't wavy at all, and this is what you want. So we will continue on to the seat back. Actually, first I'll probably finish this one. Finish restoring the tracks and get them back in, and the switches, get those all cut out and back in, so it's just ready to hook up and the back's done. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start locating our through holes. So right here is our seat switch. You can feel the outline of it. And what I'll do is I'll start by just cutting out the centers and widening those holes. What you want to do is you want to make sure that you leave some overlap. There's 2 screws, as you may remember. There's actually 4, 2 on the sides and 2 up and down. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that you can get some of the new leather down there so that the screw goes through the leather and through the bracket, through the housing for the switch. It just helps act as a method of keeping it in place and not having the leather pull away from the switch. I'm just using another seat back to prop this up while I work on it, make it a little bit easier to see. But as you can see, I've just cut some darts in here around the area where I know the switch needs to go. And I'm going to just get some scissors and start taking some of this out and placing the switch. So now I've got some holes roughed in here. I'm going to go ahead and refit my switch and start fitting it, and probably trim a little bit more. I'll take it in and out maybe a couple times. Not all the way out. It's a little bit of a pain in the butt to fish these through there, but at least out far enough that I'm not at risk of cutting any of the wires as I'm doing anything. Also, remember, with the switch, the big flat side is the bottom, so it's towards the bottom of the seat. Something else to take note of is when you're putting the switches back in, when you route the wiring, there is a place here where you can go from this area to the area for the next button. You don't want to do that because it's not going to leave room for the back of the switch. So you want to make sure that you're routing these wires for the front switch behind this support and then up into the underneath seat area. So now our switch is back through the seat and attached and good to go. Next, we're going to put our seat lever back on. So we're just going to cut a small hole above the mechanism right here. Put this back on, and we should be good to go. For this one, I just cut an X over it and force the mechanism head through there, and I'll put that on top. So now that the seat bottom is together, everything's ready to go back on, and essentially just goes in the reverse order that it came off. The same thing you did to take everything off, you do to put everything back on, and we will start on the seat back. And as I said before, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use my little Milwaukee angle grinder. to clean this up and zinc it and paint it so that it doesn't continue to corrode or cause any mess in the car. I'll do the same thing with the underside. I might clean all these up as well, but I probably won't film all that. It's relatively straightforward. If anybody wants to have advice on how to get it done, I can certainly do that, but I'm going to go through and, as we said, lubricate all of these cables and the mechanisms and put everything back together on the seat bottom. Well, since we have the bottom done, we're going to go ahead and start on the back. And there's not a whole lot of moving components to this one because it's a manual seat. You don't have the drive motors and the cables, any of that stuff, the transmissions. What I'll try to do is I'll try and find some of those parts around here and post what they look like for anybody doing that. And I actually have a buddy who I'm going to help put together some sport seats for next weekend. So I'll be able to get some information off of those and some photos just because, it's a little bit different. So with these seats, essentially everything comes down to this one seam back here. This is where everything goes into and gets sealed up at. And then, of course, we have the release for the seat backs, as well as the lever for the seat backs that roll on the inside here. So without further ado, we'll start pulling some of these. And what we'll generally do, these are fold over tabs, just like on the seat bottom, the tangs. It's easiest usually to get in there with a pick or something. And if you don't have one, usually something pointy and strong, like a electrical tester, like a 12-volt tester, just something you can get in there and pry these up is the best place to start. And here's what I'm talking about. It's hard to do with one hand, but essentially you just want to get under here, and the tanks bend over underneath, so you just need to get enough so you can get another tool in there. And particularly if you're planning on reusing the seat covers, you want to be as gentle as you can here because you don't want to damage the leather as well. Once you've released all the tangs, you can go ahead and start pulling the back off of the cover. And it will reveal to you the back side of the seat. There's going to be a number of hog ties, hog rings you're going to have to deal with back here. It kind of all buttons up. And so we'll just start piecing through it and getting these out of here. I think one important thing also to remember here is that once you release this, the seat back, the front of the back is also on those same tangs. So when you're putting it back together, you want to remember that the face of the seat goes on first, and then the back. The very back is the last thing. And you'll see there's a number of places which they're all connected and pulled together here as well as the back pad, which we'll get into. Once you release the actual back of the seat from the tangs, you'll notice it drops down. And the center portion of the seat is separate from the bolsters. And there'll be a number of places in here in which it's connected by hog rings that we'll get to. But essentially this starts releasing the back to be removed. Pay attention to the areas that you're taking things off of. So the seat back comes off. Under that layer is the side, comes over, also releases from those tangs. And then under that, you have the underside of the hinge. So the underside of the hinge is the first layer to go on. Then the side bolster gets stretched around. Then the seat back, and then that back of the seat. Having some good strong snips to cut these hog rings makes everything quite a bit easier. And again, just to reiterate, you want to make sure you're paying attention to where you take things off. So this bolster layer in the back is connected to the seat back as well as the tangs. And then also it had a hog ring in here as well. And then the bottom of the hinge is connected by a hog ring up through here. And then also it's connected to the tang here. Something you also want to be aware of is the bottom of the hinge area down here is a pretty tight fit just because it's carrying the weight it's carrying the pressure of the whole seat back down to this point. So it's a little difficult to get off and a little difficult to get on. But you also want to be careful because there is padding in here. So you want to be careful not to rip the padding. You just work it off and it will come off. It's just, it's a little bit difficult because it's part of the mechanism in which keeps the seat skin tight. So it takes a little force to get these corners off. What you want to do is also try and retain the bunting wherever you can. This is where the factory at Recaro, they put in this bunting to fill out the seat and pad areas like the hinge from wearing the leather. So do as best you can. Some of it just after 30 years is going to stick and pull away and things like that. But, just be cautious of it and do what you can. So again, what you're going to do is just continually just go through here and try and separate the bunting and the leather and just kind of massage it out and, just work the cover off. Again, I can't stress these tangs on here. With these out, I mean, as hard as you're pulling on some of this stuff, just be super careful because they'll get you. So as you fold up the seat, you'll encounter a couple of hog rings. They're keeping the back to this grill. Hit those with the snips, and there's 2 more up here. Some seats you'll find more. It just depends on who's working that day. I mean, I've seen some with 8. I think that what happens is if you get ones that are not fitting right, they'll try and pull and stretch them and fit them. But typically, you'll only find 4 to 6 at most. But what that does, it releases the center, so you can flip it up and have access to this back and start working off and peeling off the bolsters. So to remove the bolsters, you've got this mesh back here, this grill with the springs and these wires that are spaced across here. There's one down each side. Looks like it's covered in cardboard or something, but there's actually a wire in there and springs in the back. What you're going to do is you're just going to find the hog rings and work your way up, releasing the bolster from this so you can pull it away. You just want to be careful not to cut through the grill and not through the wire on the side. Also, make sure that you're cutting the hog rings and not the springs. The springs would be pretty tough to cut, but just make sure you're not cutting those because obviously that's not the desired result. So you just want to make sure you're separating the seat's underlining from the rest of the wool. I think it's wool here. Also, one thing to be cautious of is sometimes these things will look like D-rings, the springs, because the bar is actually hooked into the spring as well. So you think that it's a D-ring. What I found is the best way to get these off is just to turn on his head and just pull down like you're peeling a banana. So when you get up here to the top, you're going to find that there are some hidden hog ring clips back in here holding the top of the bolster, or excuse me, the top of the seat pad, back pad in there. So you got to just search around. It really depends on who is putting the seat together, how many there are, but you need to find them and clip them. And this is also where the right angle hog ring pliers come in handy when you're putting this back together. Trying to give you an idea. There was one in this corner over here. You can see it's cut right there. There's one right there. One hiding right there. And then there's another one that I cut in this corner. And essentially those hold the back pad into the crevice at the top of the seat where the back pad meets the headrest. It keeps it nice and snug in there and keeps a good crease there. So this is probably a good place to explain some of this. So what you have is you have a wire that runs around basically the crevice of the bolster, up, around, and back down. And there's also one in the seat. The seat actually has a frame. And you can see up there this loop. And then that connects around the perimeter. So all those hog rings are clipping around this to keep the back pad flat in there and pulled into the crease on the sides up against the bolsters. And obviously you can see it running through here. That's the wire that runs through the crevice. And again, you're just going to keep pulling this thing up and off the seat. And it'll come off pretty easily past this point. I don't need to, but at this point, this seat foam pulls right off. You can take this whole seat foam off if you want to clean it or, put in an ozone generator if you think it has odors in it. It's a great time to clean up the seats, inside, but these seats were in really good condition, so there's not much here to do except recover it. So here are the new covers. It's a little dirty from sitting on the shelf. I made the mistake of taking. They come in a big Ziploc bag, and I took them out to check them out, and I didn't put them back. Broke my own rules, but this is it. Pretty much the same design as the old one. It has a wire of some sort in the bolster here, and then you're expected to take the metal one out of the top of here to put across here. There's a pocket for it. Probably what I will do though is just these wires. I've never had a problem with them. I've used them without a stronger wire and not had an issue. But the ones in the Porsche seats are just, they're just high tensile strength. So what I will probably do is I'll take some out of there and run for up here. If they're long enough, I think that they should be long enough to run one from this side. So it runs up from the bottom, it crosses over through that pocket, and one from this side that crosses over through that pocket. And so it's double up here. I'll probably do that. And to get these things out, what you do is they're hooked at both ends so that you can get them in. They can slide them in easy. They're looped over. You just bend them out straight on one end so you can pull it out, and then you can bend it back to make the loop again once you get it where you need it. So I'll take those out there, and then also we need to take the back pad off of here, and we have to use the back pad in the new one, and we'll get to work. So just kind of explain what I was talking about here. You can see this is the end of one of those wires. I'll just bend this out straight, and then at the other end of the bottom of the seat here, it's also looped, and I'll just pull it out of this end and reuse those. So I have both wires out, and I'm going to run them up from the bottom and then cross over through the pocket right here where the headrest and the backrest meet. So what I've done is I've ran the wires up each side. So one goes up from this side around the bolster to the far side over here, and then one goes up the bolster over here to the far side over here. So essentially through here it's doubled. So once you pulled all the staples, they're just easy. They just pull right out there, an outside clinch staple. So they're putting there with a gun that goes in and just spreads out this way. Just pull this cover off, and we're gonna install it in the new seat cover. So what I've started to do is start to put the cover on. Obviously start from the headrest down, and I'm just trying to get it fit to make sure there's no issues, and get it stretched out. Probably have to use some heat, but I want to get it fit in there, and then we'll put in the pad, fasten everything down, and hopefully have a recovered seat. Probably one of the most important things with fitting the seat is when you start at the headrest, you want to look at the sides, the top, and the back seams to make sure it's on straight. Because if it's twisted at all, it's going to be wide on this side and short on this side, or vice versa. So we want to make sure that you have it going on straight from the very top. And then to fit the headrest, which is the tightest part, I just pull in here, and in the back at the bottom. And just kind of as you're pulling with your hand, you're just kind of smoothing out the seat, running it down like this, and eventually it'll seat in there. So the trick of this is to start with the top as tight as you can possibly get it. So you really want to get the headrest, just as tight as you can pull it, because it's going to make everything downline so much easier. And then also, because you've got these bars back here that you have to connect via hog ring to this bar back here, you want to make sure you have enough to get it over to that area that you need to connect it to. It's difficult getting these around the hinges. So what I do is I like to massage it down like this and then pull it over. You want to make sure you don't rip out the seams down here. So don't pull at the area where the seams are. Just keep working it down. And then once you have it over, you can start manipulating the bolsters and the foam inside of there. Because ideally, we're going to have to get this, you can see it over here, this wire down here to connect to this bar. For the bolsters, what you want to do is you want to just pull here at the same time. So pull with your right hand if you're right-handed here, while with your left-handed, you're tucking this bolster cushion farther into this corner here. That's what's going to get rid of any loose space in here. So with a little bit of work, you can get out most of this. You know, when you pull it taut to the underside cable, these things, it's just nearly impossible to get these wrinkles out initially. There'll be a little bit of waviness here. You can work and use a heat gun and might be able to get it pretty close, but eventually it just takes time. So in this step, what we're going to do is we're going to take the pad out of the seat back from the cover that we removed, and we're going to transfer it over to the new seat cover. And essentially you just want to make sure it fits down in the bottom here, so that you still have this lip that you can curl over, because remember, that's where we're going to secure it at. And then just start from the bottom, work your way up, just pulling it around the sides. It doesn't have to be super tight. You just want to make sure that the seam is hidden, and just putting staples in it as you go, and that'll get the pad in place. For this, you're going to use I use a T50 stapler with an outside clinch. So meaning it bows outside under the cover rather than cinching together. Essentially, the points will be facing up when it's done. It kind of makes like a reverse cowboy hat, I guess. But you just put those up the sides, and it holds the pad in place. It's not super sturdy, but there's enough padding and mesh underneath here that'll hold it in place. And then it's ready to be put in here. But first, what we have to do is we have to connect the outside edges of the seat. As you can see, we still got a lot of blousiness here, and I've kind of massaged on. Got still a little bit of work to do, but essentially, when you look at this, if you see that the creases are kind of flowing in this direction, means it needs to be pulled tighter in this direction. And you'll notice it's still super blousy up here, and these creases going this way need to be pulled in like this. And what'll happen is, as you remember, we've got this wire running all the way through here as a loop. Two pieces actually. One goes to about here and down. One goes from here and down. And what we're going to do is we're going to be putting hog clips through that wire up here and holding them to this bar back here. And what that will do is essentially it pulls this seam straight down into the seat. And so it's going to pull out a lot of this blousiness, and it's also going to pull back these corners a bit, so that it gets rid of some of this blousiness in the corners here on both sides. Again, with these seats, you're usually left with a little bit that will come out either with a heat gun or just over time. And there's really not a lot you can do about that, just because of the nature of the seat's curvature here. But so essentially we're ready to start fastening this. And remember, what you're going to do is just kind of go around here and secure all these. But what we'll do first is we'll put this one in, and that's the one that we need the right angle hog clip pliers for, because it's kind of buried back in here, and getting back in there while trying to pull the seat down to the bar that it needs to connect to is kind of tough when you go in there with a straight angle pliers. So we need that right angle to really get in there, because we want to pull it nice and tight to this bar down here. You can kind of see there. It runs the same direction as the seat would, as the wire does here. So you're just connecting the wire that we've installed to the wire that's existing, that's on a curvature. And that will pull this back down into there, pull the headrest tight, pull these corners a little bit tighter. But it's, again, just a little bit of a tough angle to get to. We want to probably put 4 in there. 2 towards the center, 2 towards the corners. And then once that's in, we can start going down the side and installing the seat itself, the outer bolster area. And essentially all we're going to be doing is pulling it down tight to connect to this side wire that runs through the springs. So it'll take a little bit of massaging, and this is your opportunity to kind of get some of the corners straight if you don't feel they are. And you can do a little bit of massaging of the leather to work out some of the blousiness. But essentially, once we get that in, then that's pretty much the last step, because then after that we're just going to be placing this pad. You can see the pad will have a ridge here. The ridge goes over this bar at the top, and then as we go, we'll just connect it either 4 or 6 times with hog clamps to the underlying wire. What I always suggest doing is connecting the hog clamps through the leather and into the wire, just in case these pull loose. Or once it's in there, it shouldn't be a huge problem, because there's not a lot of stress on these. It lays flat back in there. It's really pushed down deep into the seat. I mean, it's comes up to maybe 1.5 inches above where the seam is. But so we'll go ahead and get started. I should probably add here, if it didn't get caught before, is that you want to make sure you start with these 4 hog rings at the top around the headrest before you start doing the sides, because what that's going to do is going to allow you to pull in these corners as best you can and get this pad seated in there, so you have a nice crease up here that's pulled down nice tight in there. And then also, as you go, you'll be able to, once this is connected up here in this top area, it allows you for some adjustment and kind of see where you're at as you're pulling this tight. If you need to let it out a little bit and clamp it higher or clamp it lower to get some of these bolsters to lay flat, it gives you some flexibility there. So I would suggest you start with the very top and then kind of work your way down, and you can massage the seat as you go, and you'll end up with the best results. One thing I should probably add here is that it is not impossible to reach this bar back here with the straight hog ring pliers. You can, it's just not ideal. And the angled ones are a little bit harder to come by. I mean, you can get them through Amazon, but you're not going to find them locally, like at a hardware store, unless you have an upholstery shop or something near you. So what I would suggest is, if you have them available, I would use them or acquire them, particularly if you're going to do a lot of this, like if you're doing an entire interior, or you plan on doing multiple sets of seats. But you can get in there with the standard and connect to this bar back here. So what I suggest is that you put 1 hog ring on each side. There's a dip in the bar here that connects to the back. It's actually welded to the frame, so it keeps from pulling up. So I'd put 1 on each side there of the dip, and then 1 in each corner. It should be enough to hold it in there nice and tight, and get that seam laid nice and snug inside of there. So I don't have my angle hog ring pliers. I forgot I loaned them to a friend. So I'm going to show you, this can be done without them. If I don't like the results, I might wait till I have mine back. But essentially, you're going to go in there and grab this sleeve that has the wire in it, and you're going to pull it out towards you so you can get behind the wire, and then take your hog ring pliers and poke it through. And in this case, there's 2 wires in there. So you're going to poke it through so that it's actually hooking on the wires, and then you're going to use the hog ring pliers to force it down and back to reach that bar, and then you'll squeeze the pliers and apply the hog ring. So as you can see here, I've got the hog pliers back in there, and I pulled it down to meet the bar, the hoop bar that's attached to the seat on the left-hand side of the divot, and I clamped it down. So I'm going to rivet it, and you can see there that it is securely fastened through both the wires that are in this sheath as well as the bar itself. You can adjust the positioning of the hog ring inside the pliers to actually get a little bit of a tooth to stick out there, so it makes it easier to hook around the bar and then go underneath the fixed bar to secure it. So I've got them both of the top hog rings, the center hooked in. Pulled it pretty decent, but now I'm going to put some of these corners to really kind of pull this down flat. As you can see, they are hooked around both sides of the bar and through the wires inside the sheath. So it might be a little tough to see here, but there is an area in this corner where you can get to the wire there, hook the hog ring that's in the pliers around the wire, and then force it back down against that bar that you can see. And that's the hoop bar that runs through the back of the seat and is fixed to the frame. And then clamp it. So with it fixed in both corners as well in the center and the back, you can see it's pulled down nicely. And so what we'll do is just start working our way down and manipulating some of this area get as flat as we can. It's going to take some side bolster manipulation, but then we're also going to hook the pad. Actually, we'll probably wait to hook the pad until we get both bolsters all the way down. So what you want to do as you come down these sides is you want to load up your ring tool and then go in here and find the wire. You can pull this out a little bit, this wire guide, hook it through the wire, and then use the pliers to push it down and hook it across this bar. So these outside bars, these are actually wires that are covered in the cardboard-like material that the center ones are. Center ones are not wires, they're just material. But you just want to break it down and connect it in a few spots until you feel comfortable with it, and you're good to go. So at this point, after you've got the bolsters connected, you can go back in if you'd like to and put a couple hog rings through these to hold them down to the wire screen in the back. It's not really necessary, but what we're going to do is we're going to start attaching the back pad to the underside here, which means just getting it up there in place. You want to make sure when you get it in here, you get that lip up over the bar, the existing bar in here, right here. You want to make sure it's on top of that and it's formed to it. So you want to make sure it gets stuffed up in there nice and tight, and that's going to alleviate you having any gaps back here. But then once we get in there, we'll get connected and just work our way down. So again, what you're going to do here is just find a couple spots, maybe 4 or 6. You want to attach the back pad to the wire screen behind it. And you can also, if you want to, you can connect to the leather on the side to the leather on the back of the back pad. But this doesn't take a whole lot of pressure, so just something to simply secure it on there is fine. So before you start connecting the back at the bottom here, you want to make sure to take the wire out of the bottom of the old seat cover. And there's a channel again that slides in here. Or if you choose to, you can also use a piece of hanger cut to length. Just a piece of wire hanger works really well also. So for the back corners, what I like to do is the bottom flap that comes around the underside of the hinge, I like to pull up like this and towards this corner over here. And you might want to just cut a little hole in it to make it fit down over the tang, because remember, you're going to have other things going on here. And then the side flap, that's the face of the hinge, is going to be a little bit longer. I usually fold it over so it follows the angle of the seat here. And then wrap it under, and you're going to grab both of them with a hog clip and just clamp them to the frame like you'll see over here. So the end result is that you want to have all of these tangs coming through, as well as everything folded away and tucked under and clamped that's coming from the side of the seats. And this is going to hold things tight where the hinges are as well. So next, we're going to go ahead and connect the seat back. It wraps up and around these tangs, and we'll get that connected. So now I have the seat back tight to where I like it, where it's not pulling at the top on the front, and it's laying down nice. The tangs are through it, and the ones on the side are sticking out next to the pad, but they're all ready for the back pad. And what I'm doing is I'm using a piece of hanger for this one, because the factory wire that comes with it, it's sturdy, but it just it doesn't go, it only covers about these 3, and then the cover just goes on the rest. What I prefer is I prefer to use a hanger because it's more rigid, so I can put it through here, and then once it's through, I can bend the ends to contour and fit these curves, and it's going to be much stronger as well. So you want to start with the center tang first. Make sure it's nice and square, and then pull it over there and clamp this one so that you can start working on the sides. I just kind of work my way. So, center, out, 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 out. So now the seat back is connected and taut. What you want to do is make sure to, when you're putting these things through and curling them under, just take the time to take a small hammer or tool and just kind of point those tips back in on the seat itself, on the off chance you have somebody get a hand under there, or a toe if they're sitting in the back seat, which there's not very much of going on in these cars usually, but you just don't want anybody to be able to catch that. So tap them back under and you're good to go. And there we have the almost finished product. We've still got to get our hinges and our hinge releases, our seat releases on the sides. But, you know, I figured there'd be some blousing there, which is pretty common. So we'll have to work that out with a heat gun, or probably more than likely I will have this just sit out in the sun. And, you know, it's not that big of a deal to me, but if you want a perfect finish, you can certainly get it that way or very close to it. So what I did here was I just located the holes in the seat and cut a couple of holes out. You know, the bolt holes, we cut a couple holes out so we can place the seat back and get it fastened down. The other thing you need to do is make sure to fish out the seat back release cable, because that is going to go into the hinge side. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and get this mounted up and get the seat back releases fastened and go on from there. So what we're going to do now is position the seat to attach the back. It's usually easiest to start with the seat on the back, putting in the top ones first and having the seat reclined towards the back. That way you can rotate it down onto the lower ones. So as you're bringing the seat down into position, also you want to make sure that the releases, there's a cable and a sheath on the cable. You want to make sure that before you fully install the seat, you put this sheath or put the cable through the back of there, so that this is the saddle that the housing rides in, but you have to have it out to get it through here. So before you install the seat completely, the bolts, make sure you have those both in position on both sides. So on reassembly of the seat back releases, you want to make sure that you pull it down so that it's pulling the lever. This one's not undone yet, but or cut out, but you want to make sure it's pulling the lever back down into its ready position, which would be at the bottom over here. So pull it taut once you have this on. Make sure that the tang is going through so that the end of it faces to the seat, and then pull it down, twist as far as you can without pulling it, and then put the arm on and put the seat clip on, and then you're ready to cut out the hole and put the switch surround, or excuse me, the latch surround and the latch back in.